We're over here in the events table module. We're going to replace the overlay system with a simple tab in, type, and tab out system for editing fields, or cells I call them, in the events table on the person tab. This is the events table. Here we got 4 events for this person. They're all birth-like events. So there are 4 birth-like events. Here's one of each. There's no other events. What if we were to add one? Let's just do that, just for the fun of it. School residence. Call them conclusions because these are conclusions that the user makes. Oh, I typed in there and nothing happened. Why? You can tab through. Well, it's because at one point I did away with the instant typing so that I could have a long place show in more than one line, because the places were stretching across here like this and the whole app was stretching way over to here and I didn't like the way it looked. So I replaced the tkinter entries with tkinter labels like this that you can't type into, and then if you want to make an edit you have to double click and there is an entry that you can type into. And then if you click OK, then the new information will show up here. The problem with that is you don't want to deal with all that rigmarole. You'll want to tab into a field and just start typing, and it's annoying to me that that doesn't happen. So I'd like for the user to have a good user experience here at TreeBart. Therefore, instead of double clicking and typing and hitting OK or cancel, I want to go back to the old system which was used before, where you just tab in and start typing. So in order to do that, we've already in this series created a multi-line widget that you can type into instantly instead of a multi-line label that you have to overlay with something that looks like that. And then you have to get rid of it and you have to write all kinds of code for it. Look at the code here. Overlay occurs in this module 59 times. Okay, so we're going to get rid of some code. We're going to get rid of that overlay widget. We're going to get rid of the OK and cancel buttons, and we're just going to have cells. You're going to type into the cell that you see. You see a cell here, it's going to be editable. All these cells are going to be editable. These 5 columns. This is an autofill. For example, you type in R, type in E, type in S. You see that's an autofill. We're going to put the autofill right here. This doesn't open an autofill, but there is validation. We're going to include the validation, so you cannot put any bad dates. This opens an autofill. It's a different autofill for places. So if you type in A, you get Alberta, type in S, you get Aspen, like that. We're going to have an autofill. It's called Cell Autofill. It's a widget. We made it. You and I made it together. Instead of this overlay, we're going to have a plain old entry like this that you can type into. Okay, say you're changing it from residence to occupation. You can do that now. Click OK. There's an error. We're not going to fix it. We're going to replace this code. I've rewritten the events table many times. This is going to be fairly intensive surgery. I've done part of it already. Now another feature is when you have a birth or a birth-like, these are all birth-like events, all 4 of these. You point at this, it's going to show the birth parent's name. These names here, it's going to show a kin tip right here. You point at this, it's going to show the foster parents in a kin tip right here. Point at guardianship, it's going to show the guardianship parents. Show adoption, it's going to show the adoptive parents. If there was a marriage, then you would show the partner. There's a place for partner right here. And underneath that, there's a place for children. Let's add a partner. So we have a full-featured person here. We're going to use Mila Schreiner, number 51. Remember that number. Tell me if I forget. She's going to have a husband named George. You see the existing people fill in. We're going to make a new person instead. George Fred Euclid. Just the first thing that come in my teeny tiny little mind. Add partner. We get an add person dialog. Auto sort, that's fine. Birth name, that's fine. We're going to say he's a male. Never mind images right now. And now we have a partner. So let's add some children. We select that partner. And we're going to add a child to the selected partner. And we're going to have, let's say, a daughter named Sally F. Euclid. Add child, spacebar, another new person. Let's make one more child for George and one more partner. Add child. Okay. All right, now over here for George, let's just add one more child. Add child, auto sort, male, okay. Any couple event, if you point to this, it's going to have a kin tip that says either George or John. If you point to an offspring event, it's going to have a kin tip down here for one of these three children. So you got three offspring events, you're going to have a kin tip down here. So you point to that event, it's going to show you which child we're talking about. We want to be thinking all along about building the kin tip functionality into what we're doing. We're going to need that information when we point to that event. So since we're kind of rewriting this events table, at least parts of it, we want to be thinking about the kin tips, the birth events and the couple events. You need to say which parents, which child, birth events, couple events, and offspring events. You need to say which partner, which child, which parent here in a kin tip. We want to think about that in advance and not try to retrofit into something that we built without thinking. This is a conclusions table. These are your conclusions. Your events and attributes are here, and there's no clear line between events and attributes. Therefore, we put them in the same table and we call them all conclusions, and don't worry about it. They get the same treatment. I tried the other way. I don't like have a disjointed story. We're telling a story here in TreeBart. This is a story about a person. This is a story about a human being. This is not a tax form or something. We don't want it to be ugly. We don't want it to be scary. We don't want it to look like hard work. We want it to be beautiful and fun and simple looking. What we do behind the scenes is complicated, but we don't want the user to feel that he has to do something complicated. We don't want the user to get scared away, because TreeBart is a showcase of functionalities. It's a working model for developers to use, to borrow from, to translate into the programming language of their choice. And we want to start out with something that is worth copying from. That's what TreeBart is for. It's not a finished program. It's a model program. You can't change an offspring event to another kind of event, because an offspring event is created by TreeBart, not by the user. Birth event is also created by TreeBart, not by the user. Everybody comes with a birth because we assume they were born, and we assume they're born at age 0. Our handy dandy new colorizer works very fast now. Very fast. I'm so happy with that. Let's change this. There's your occupation. The undated events and attributes are filed alphabetically at the bottom of this table. The dated events are filed by date, except for birth and death. Birth is first, death is last, and then we have a few after death events which will be filed after the death. So birth, death, and after death have a fixed position in the table. Everything between birth and death is sorted by date. After death events such as probate, reading the will, that sort of thing, those will be filed after the death, but amongst the various after death events, they will be sorted by date. First thing we ought to do is get rid of the overlay. Okay, the overlay is causing us some confusion here. Let's make it go away. So the first step to doing that is to get rid of everything that says overlay in the code, and the second step is to fix all the problems that causes. Overlay, not a match whole word. There's 59 of those. Let's start at the top and just comment a whole bunch of code. Make edit overlay. Not anymore. Another problem with the overlay is we have one overlay for events, another overlay for places, because they use different autofills. Well, that was a pain, let me tell you. We're deleting that pain right now, and it's going to be painful to delete it. And don't delete any of this right now. Look at this big, huge thing we're going to get rid of. You see that? Overlay. You see this? All this code, all that's for the overlay. This code, all that's for overlay, all that's for overlay. Oh my goodness. You had to have a special way to cancel the overlay depending on what column you were in. This was not easy to do. And we're going to get rid of it because it's not easy to maintain, update, extend, or understand. I ain't saying the new way is going to be easy. I wouldn't say that. And now we run the code, and what is our first error going to be? Double clicking this ain't going to do nothing. I will not open an overlay, and there's no error. All right, well, next step is to replace these labels. This is label entry dynamic. That's a custom class I made that I won't be using. The overlay is not a big problem everywhere. We have an overlay here, but it's a simple application of an overlay. If you've got rows up here, you want to edit one of them, there's an overlay that does it, and it's much simpler. You don't have all those columns, only 2 columns in the rows table. So if you tell me what I'm thinking, I'll try to tell you what's wrong with it. I don't think I want a multi-line widget here. We could just use the entry autofill event type. This is not an autofill at all. It's possible for a date to be really long, like all the way from there to there, and if they're using a big font, it could be a lot longer. So we're going to use cell here. We could use entry autofill here, or we could use cell autofill here. If we're using the same widget in all these places, then our code is going to be more symmetrical. Over here for place, that's where we definitely want multi-line. Particulars, we want multi-line. Age, we don't. This could be an entry, and it's not an autofill, it's just a plain old entry. There is something to be said for symmetrical code, that we use the same kind of code on each column in case we can do anything en masse, and then we don't have to keep saying if else. You want to use maybe a cell on each one, and instead of using an entry here and an entry here, you want to say cell autofill for place, cell autofill for event. There might be a cell autofill event type and a cell autofill place. I don't know how that's going to work. That code's not going to write itself. You and I are going to write that code together. Start with particulars. That's going to be a cell. It's not going to be an autofill. This is going to be easy. In fact, we're not going to have any autofills at first. We're going to start out with cell on all of them, and later we're going to change this one and this one to autofill, and I don't think we're going to use entries. The reason I'm quibbling on this is that the cell inherits from tkinter text, which is a huge class. Possibly it will make the table draw slower because the class is so big. I don't know. Entry's a big class too. Entry has lots of methods and stuff. Let's just have symmetrical code, because speed isn't everything in TreeBARD. TreeBARD is written in Python. Speed isn't what we're really after, because people can take the Python code and translate it into some compiled language that they want to use so that it runs nice and fast. Okay, let's just use cell for all of them. Let's find out when those table cells get made. Here's your init. This runs on load only. So anything that happens here might have to happen over again when the table is redrawn. Therefore, this, which is the main method here, it makes the table rows, makes the cells, it adds content to the cells, and then it grids all the cells in the right column. This also runs over here in redraw. So when you make a change, then we redraw the table. I think that might be considered overkill, but that's how I always do it, because it keeps edits from collecting somewhere and being forgotten. You just go straight to the database and redraw the table. I ain't saying it's easy, but that's how I do it. In some ways it keeps things simple for me anyway, because I'm kind of a simple person. This is where we're going to make table cells. So instead of label entry dynamic, we're going to replace that with cell. Self, that's the parent of that widget. It's probably not in widgets yet, but I can put it in there if you don't mind. It'll take a few seconds to do that. Here's our model. I believe I made these. See, there's our fake events table. Remember this? Okay, so see, now you tab from here to here, you could type in those instantly. All right, that's what we're going to do. There's where I made it. And then under that, there's one called Cell Autofill that inherits from Cell. And then here you put your autofill features. So we're going to just automatically go over here and import Cell and Cell Autofill from widgets, and we're going to put those classes in widgets.py. I'm going to put these new classes up here very first at the top. Tree bar is not defined. 27. Oh, we got to make some changes. If you recall, we no longer have to define all this stuff in the class. We fixed that. See if there's any other mention of formats in this. Yes. So the highlight and the unhighlight depend on formats. What about tree bar? The tree bar we definitely want to get rid of, but formats we're going to have to find a way to put that in there. So we got to go over to their Cell and Cell Autofill. It's already here, so I don't have to mess around with it. How do I get formats in here? Well, let's look at something else that has a highlight feature and see how it was done there. Tkinter will tell you what top level window you're in and give you a reference to it. Well, it seems like a good idea. Copy that. You just have to put this in the parent class. Okay, we're trying to get formats into here. All right, now as I said, we're doing error-driven programming at this moment because we've replaced a label with a text widget, a Tkinter label with a Tkinter text widget, and there's going to be lots of errors, and that's what's going to guide us down the primrose path by our nose at this point. There is no option text in a text widget, and Cell inherits from a text widget. Line 285. So instead of this, we're going to have widg.insert, and you got to say where you're going to insert it. That's line 1, character 0. That's a string, and that is still the variable text. See if that error went away. May get another one just like it, or even a better one. Oh, well, yeah, now you see these are kind of on the large sides. But we got rid of the error, so that's the most important part. Yeah, everything's there now. Look at that. Oh, that is very clever. Oh my. Yeah, the size needs to be moderated a little bit. And if I recall, there was a method in Cell called set height. Oh yeah, set height. After you create this widget. Okay, if C is less than 5, C happens to be the column in this case. And columns 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are going to be cell widgets. And we're calling that cell a widge right here. Okay, that fixed the height. Now what are we going to do about the width? A text widget by default is a certain number of characters wide. What I'd like for this to do is to fit itself to the contents. These are going to be fixed so that when you tab into a widget, a cell, you get its contents, you save its contents. That will be its original contents in case there's like a cancel event or something, so that you can put the original contents back in. You also need to be able to compare the original contents to what's in the contents when you tab out. This runs when you tab out, this runs when you tab in, but this is the old code that was used in the overlay. So we're going to fix this, but not right now. This is when we get the initial text, you see, and we're going to start at the beginning and go to the end. That's probably going to look like this. Next error, please. Tabbing through, that seems to be working nice and smooth without errors. What I'd like to know right now is why those are not sizing to their contents width-wise. Maybe I had not actually done anything to make that happen. You can see this is not sizing to its contents either. None of these are. I just give them all a fixed width. You want to have long lines break somewhere. So maybe there'd be a condition size to the contents if it's small. If it's over a certain number of characters, then you want to give it a fixed width. We need to create this feature. We're going to do that over in widgets. We're going to create set width. You have to do it every time, so why should you have to remember two things when you could remember one thing? Let's just call it set height and change the name later. Set we're going to get a minimum width, we're going to get a maximum width, we're going to get the width of the text. Then we're going to set the cell width, the cell itself, inside the cell class. This is the way I've been doing it lately. Instead of self.config, if the text width is not greater than the max width, then self.width is going to be reduced. And we're going to get the length of that. In characters. We need to run set height after the text is put into the widget, and we'll find that out when it doesn't work right. What's our maximum width? Well, we can say anything we want, so let's just say 30 for right now, so 32. For age, we want a minimum width of, let's say 6. We want to be able to see it. That changed the width. That's good. That's step one, was to make sure we're changing the width and having no error. Here's the problem. When we ran set height, there was no text in anything. So it set everything to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Tkinter can't count, but that's all right. We don't know why 6 equals 7. That's not very important. What's important is that I run self.setHeight in the right place. This was not needed here. In TreeBar, you can say 150 years, 12 months, and 31 days if you want, or whatever you want. Ages should never be an integer. We don't build our app around GEDCOM, not at all. But we want TreeBar to be here in 100 years, and GEDCOM's not going to be here in 100 years. Guarantee. This is a string. You want to type anything you want here in age, anything. It's not TreeBar's problem what the user wants to put there. Those are all the same width. See, we're getting clues here. But look at that now. Why did that happen? Because this whole column is being sized to fit this header. That's how Tkinter does things, which is nice. But we want these to be resizing width-wise according to what we said in our method, and that's not working yet. Back in widgets, it's using min width all the time, which means that the text width must not be getting the actual text width. So we're going to print that and see. There's always one in there. Tkinter puts a line break in every text widget. That's why it says there's one in there on the empty ones. And most of the others are more than 6. So this condition is not working yet. What we're missing here is another condition, because we don't have any text that's over 32. So it's doing this for everything. So if it's not greater than 32, but it is greater than 6, then we're going to set it to minimum width if it's small. That's better. The real test is, what does it do with a lot of text? So we're working on particulars first. Let's just go ahead and put something in here for particulars. Can't do it with GUI right now. Won't work. But we can just go straight to the database and do it there. So we got particulars. This is Mila Schreiner, person number 51. Select everything from event where person ID equals 51. Adoption was in 1892. So that's going to be this one. That's event ID 71. Let's add particulars to that. Update event set particulars equals, thank goodness that didn't work. Oh my goodness. Oh, you got to be more careful than this. I almost changed all the particulars in every event to the same thing. I got lucky. Fortunately, there was a apostrophe in my text, and because of that, I didn't end up changing all the particulars everywhere in my whole entire database for every event to Granny's play in the mud. You can't talk while you do updates and deletes in a database. You just can't. Where, very important, you got to filter or you're going to change every single event. Okay, oops. They're saying that I can't put a double quotation here. Let's do this. Not worry about the details and just make it work for now. Apparently I have to use single quotes. Don't know what that escape character might be, but it's probably not hard to do. Select everything from event. There you go. It's only showing 2 lines. The lines where we don't need extra space for text are set to the height of 1, and the others are set to the height of the text. And for some reason I had to add 1. I don't know why, and we'll figure that out sooner or later. Doing good, making good progress. We'll do age next. All we have to do is make sure that this can't be changed. You shouldn't be able to do that. Age at birth is always 0. And after that, we will start on date, which is not an autofill. Then we'll do the event type, which is an autofill, but it's easy. And then we'll do the hard one, which is a place autofill. So thanks for dropping by. See you next time.